I'm now pleased to introduce WLS next speaker, Isela Costantini. Isela is Brazilian, but she is actually living in Buenos Aires. Her parents live in Buenos Aires. She's a proponent advocate for employee engagement and customer-focused development in business. She's viewed as a change and restructuring expert, former CEO of Aerolíneas Argentinas Argentine Airlines. Isela has had a prolific and high-profile career, serving as the CEO of General Motors Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay, making history as the first woman to run an automotive manufacturer in Argentina, and as the head of the Argentine Automobile Builders Association. Great jobs for a woman. Yes, today she serves on the boards of both Buenos Aires Food Bank and the Center for the Implementation of Public Policies for Equity and Growth. And she is actually the CEO of GST Financial Services. Please welcome Isela Costantini.
Good morning to all. I have a huge challenge, and I love challenges, but I'm supposed to give my speech in 45 minutes, considering Q&A. So I'm gonna try to just rush. So I'll just to make sure that I go through the first part of the presentation with more examples and very thorough presentation. And then if I have to rush, I'll leave it to rush for the end of the presentation so I can give space for Q&A. So what I'm actually gonna talk about is about leading in times of change. And I think that we have been hearing a lot about those two words, leadership and change. We heard about change more often, and we heard about transformation more often than what we think we could handle. Every time somebody says we have to change something, we get kind of scared and kind of basically we freak out. So before I talk about change, I actually want to talk about today about two concepts. Leadership and change. So I'm just going to go a very brief explanation about leadership, and then I will spend most of my presentation about change and restructuring or transformation. When we talk about leadership, there were several authors that we always debate whether or not we are born leaders or we have to develop ourselves to become leaders. So we often ask the questions, are you a leader? And if I ask the question about whether or not you feel that you are a leader, maybe some of you will raise your hands, and some of you may not raise your hand, because maybe you think that you don't have the title, you don't have on your business card something that says you are the manager, you are the supervisor, you are the director, or you are the president. And we sometimes forget that we are leaders of our own lives. So if we think about who decided to be here at this event, who decided to wear the clothes you're wearing today, who decided to get late or arrive at time today, we kind of lead ourselves and lead our lives. There's a big difference, of course, as we grow, as we develop ourselves, and we become leaders of larger groups, so we have more responsibilities. And there's a big difference. I always make the example of leadership skills that are very noticeable when we are kids. Sometimes you see the boy with the ball, and you say, okay, he's going with the soccer ball, along with several kids following him to play soccer. And we tend to see the ball and say, no, this is the boy who owns the ball. And sometimes happens that this guy doesn't own the ball. The ball belongs to somebody else, some of his friends. And the difference is that he has this natural skill that he will grab the ball without any conflicts and will say, hey, let's play soccer, and we'll play soccer where I want and about the time that I want to play soccer. This is a natural leadership that we see very, very young in kids, and we probably you face some of these leadership skills, either yourself or some of your friends. The difference is that if that kid has a natural skill for leadership, but he doesn't want to develop it, he doesn't want to work on that, very rarely he will actually excel being a leader. It's like athletes. You sometimes see kids who had this very gift to play soccer, or could be a great swimmer, or a basketball player. But if this boy doesn't have the discipline, doesn't have the passion, he most likely will not excel as being a great athlete. So the most important thing about leadership, I always say, is desire to become a great leader. It's desire to say, you know, I want to make sure that I can learn about all the tools so I can develop myself and be a great leader. And part of these leadership skills that we can develop depends basically of one basic fundamental thing about, which is being humble. Being humble means that you necessarily don't think that you know everything, and you basically say, I need to learn more about how to become a great leader. So I think that this is a basic concept. So when we talk about change, we have to understand that somehow in our environment, we have the ability to develop ourselves to become leaders. Now, it doesn't mean that we can become leaders of change, but we can become leaders of teams, and actually we can help organizations to go through change. So let me go through actually what I want to talk, which is change. When we talk about change, we have all these different things that go around, but I like to think about change, that there is no reason to change if we don't think about evolution. Change just for the sake of change, what's the reason? We have to think about change because we have to evolve. And if we don't evolve, we don't survive. So not getting into the theory of the evolution of the species, but actually, if we don't think that we have to survive, if we don't think that we don't do something different today, we may not be here tomorrow, we need to think about change into that perspective. I'll give you some of the examples in some of the industries that we saw the importance of change and the importance of being alert to change. Kodak. Who has not used the films from Kodak? Somebody who have not used films? We don't have millennials, we don't have Generation Z. All of us, every time that we had to go on a trip, the first thing that we think, we have to go and buy some rolls. We have to buy the films. And Kodak was the first one to come up with the films, the 35 millimeters film, and we said that that was a great invention. A couple of years later, Kodak had to reinvent themselves and say, why don't we come up with a camera? So they came with the first camera, the portable camera, which still had the films, but the last attempt to survive as the main industry, as Kodak created themselves, was with a big blockbuster at Hollywood that was Star Wars. So they tried to get into Hollywood, trying to move from the travel and tourism type of business into like the mega blockbuster or mega movies. Kodak lasted from 1888 to 2012, he lasted 124 years. Let's look at another example. Who doesn't remember the long plays? They are now back, but it's a different long plays. So they lasted 1945 to the 90s, and they basically overlap with the tape recorders, and they overlap with the CDs. Who has CDs today? Where do we handle all the CDs? We're now talking, we had through iPods, we moved from iPods, we are talking Spotify today. Well, this type of industry lasted 61 years. Let's look at another industry. Who doesn't remember the floppy disks? I have a very funny story. I was working at GM, I worked in GM for 17 years. And I was working in product planning in the year 2009, 2010, and a colleague from Mexico, he calls me and said, Isela, we're about to think to launch a vehicle on the web, sell online, and we had launched at GM in Brazil, the first vehicle we sold 100% online in the year 2002. And he said, can you give me some of the information, some of the background? Do you have data that can help me to just see how we can create that online sales here in Mexico? I said, of course. I have all this data at home, so let me go back at home tonight, and tomorrow morning I'll send you the data. So I went back home, I got my box with all my floppy disks and all my diskettes, and I said, you know, I have these 3-inch diskettes with all the data. So I got the data of my Celta business case, and the following day, I went to my computer, my laptop, and I started looking at the hole to put the diskette, and I couldn't find the hole. So I said, since when my laptop doesn't have a place to actually put the diskettes? So I went to my secretary. I said, do you have that on your desktop? She also didn't have that on their desktop. So that industry died before I even noticed that the company had died. So 46 years lasted that industry. As technology comes and much faster, we're seeing that the industry is shrinking or companies are disappearing. Let's look at the mobile industry. First, mobile was like a big box. It looked like a TNT explosion and bomb because it was pretty heavy. If we look at the time that the first mobile was created, at the time the first smartphone was created, 25 years. Companies have disappeared along this time. How many companies we have seen that they are trying to just recreate themselves? BlackBerries, StarTech, with Motorola. We have been seeing a lot of companies who have been disappearing and new companies that are coming up, and new companies that are coming from nowhere. When we talk about cloud, when we talk about Amazon, when we talk about Spotify, these are Uber, these are companies that are coming from a different completely background. They're not coming with the revolution and the evolution of some of the goods that we have seen. So basically what we're seeing is that technology is advancing much faster. And the big question is that if technology is a need or opportunity. Why are we changing? What is happening and what is the impact of technology? Is because of a need or is just an opportunity for the change? So I'll give you an example. One of the products that I created, I changed the entire portfolio for Mercosur, was this product called Onyx. Onyx is a small vehicle for the ones who are in the north of the world. These are basically a Veo competitor. It's a Corsa competitor. It's a GM vehicle, of course. And the main competitors of this vehicle is the Volkswagen Go and the Fiat Palio. That was year 2009. And I used to read a lot of things, a lot of articles, and one of the articles that I read is this short article. It came on a magazine that basically nobody would read that magazine. It had like just 10 pages magazine, and the page was so thin that it was almost transparent. So just going through skimming the magazine, I saw this article, and the title was very interesting because it said, "The laptop is the new automobile." And I saw that article had something that I had to pay attention. Magazine was horrible. I think that nobody read that magazine other than me. But the article had a story about a research that I had done. It didn't say how many people were interviewed. It didn't say where the interview was taken. It didn't have any data that actually supported that the data was reliable. But I said, it doesn't matter how reliable the data is. If it's anywhere in the world that we talk about with teenagers or we talk with 18 years old guys, and they are not mentioning that the first desire is a car instead of a computer, a laptop, there's something else that is like, we have to pay attention to that. So basically, based on that, I decided to just go further and do another research. So I grabbed several focus groups with basically 16 years old, 18 years old boys and girls, and we actually talk about their desire and what they wanted and what they were expecting to. And we were really surprised that the laptop means being connected and the laptop means mobility. So we said, we have to think about what is changing the minds of these kids, that they are not seeing that the vehicle is what they are going to drive them to all these different places. There is something that can connect them to more places and faster than what they can do with a car and cheaper than moving with a car. So based on that, we went through a big, huge fight because it's a very entry-level vehicle where we said the main reason for this vehicle is going to be connectivity. So we don't care about having 4 wheels. We don't care about having automatic transmission or manual transmission. We care about being connected. This vehicle is going to be all about connectivity. Well, you have no idea how difficult that discussion was globally with GM and inside of the engineering team. Because they said, connectivity will be much more expensive and it will add cost to the vehicle. And we got to a point that we said, okay, I'd rather have the connectivity than the spare tire. And the engineering team said, but it's illegal to not have the spare tire. Well, it's illegal not to have the connectivity. For these kids, we need to have connectivity. These are the type of things that I always say that we have to pay attention because the way of business is changing. And sometimes we don't listen to how things are changing. So the question that we always ask ourselves, how do we identify the need of change? Do we identify it from inside or do we identify it from outside? In this case, the case that I just gave you as an example, I identified it from outside. I had an alarm, said, there's something wrong here. People are not talking about 18-year-old guys. They're not saying that the first wish they had is to own a vehicle. They're seeing something else. So we identified that from the outside, but there are several alarms that we have to identify from inside. And the first alarm that we have to identify is metrics of our own company. And I'm always surprised to see how sometimes we don't look at our own metrics. We don't look at how the sales are going. We don't look at how competition is doing against us. We have sometimes great metrics that said we are selling 20% more than last year. Great. How about the market? Is the market growing at 18%, 20%, or 30%? So having metrics and being able to actually follow up and seeing how the metrics are evolving, how the results are evolving. And today, we have several data. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. We can get data on sales from the region, from the market, from the person. We had get data about gender. We had data from the results of different ages. We can get data about a lot of things, but we have to actually get into the data collection. And it's not just collecting the data. We actually need to read the data and actually do something with the data. But it's very important that we start looking at the alarms that we can see. I always mention that we have 4 areas to help identify the need of change. One is technology, the other is competition, the other is environment, and the last one is people. So I'm just going to try to go through each of these examples. Technology, we mentioned a little bit, what is technology, but how does it impact your customers? Today, technology is part of our lives. I always say that I can leave my house without my purse and my wallet, but I cannot leave my house without my phone. Technology is part of my life. I just cannot be disconnected. There are several trends it will be around 2010, 2011. We're looking at global societal trends around the globe. And there was this huge need to be globally connected. Everybody in the world wanted to be connected. And in Europe, we started to see one of the global trends that started like being disconnected. We were so overwhelmed about connectivity, so overwhelmed about information that in some places where connectivity was so overwhelming, they decided, I need to be able to disconnect. But the disconnect was also about technology. How I can just disconnect from all these devices that I have and all the information that I receive. I just want to make sure that I can at least for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, be disconnected from the world. So technology changed the way we do business and the way our customers behave. So since you're in the lottery business, and we have several games, we have several apps that we do from our computers or from our cell phones. The need to do not move, or the facility, or the easy just to stay at home and do some things from home, it's something that is changing how our customers behave. Technology is making shorter spaces and shrinking the times or the effort that customers needed to do to actually feel satisfied or buy something or have some pleasure. When we look at competition, we always tend to just disregard the competitor who is in the garage next door. If the company doesn't have a big retailer store with all the layout very well prepared, we say, competitors are not going to be challenging enough. Customers are not looking at only the retail stores. They are looking for the experience. How do you offer the experience if you're just thinking about the way you feel or your business used to be for several years? How does your competitor is actually delivering what your customer is actually looking for? And this is very difficult. I know it's very difficult because we have sometimes to just break our mindset and just reshape and think about from a different perspective. But think not about yourself and how your business has to evolve, but think about how your customer is evolving or what your customer needs. Environment. I always heard that, well, we cannot control the environment. We cannot control regulations. We cannot control public opinion. We cannot control them, but we can just work and be prepared in advance. Laws are not created from one day to another day. Laws are starting to be written. They have to be discussed. They have to look for people to support them. They have to have debates to make sure that, so we have to be sure that we read and we alert to all these places where we actually can see what is happening that may change the way we do business. It's very important that we can actually understand what are the different impacts that can change our profitability, that can change our span of life, but we actually have to be prepared and prepare for the worst. I always say that if we are prepared for the worst, we can actually plan in advance for all these different scenarios. And the last one is customers. And I separate people into customers and employees. And I put them into the big same group, which is people. Because at the end, we are all the same. You are owners, you are employees, but we are customers. And if we're not customers of our own business, we are customers of a different service. And the way we expect or what we demand from different services is basically similar to the way that we're going to demand from the or our customers will demand from the services we offer. So I'm just going to spend here a couple of minutes talking about customers and employees, because I truly think it's very important. Customers today, they are more than just gender, age, or background in terms of what education they had, or social class. Customers today, we have to go beyond that. We have to go beyond that, trying to understand what they're looking for. How many of you actually understand what each of the customers you guys have actually look for when they try to buy your services or buy your products? It's a short experience. They want to have a fast, satisfying moment. They really like risk-taking. What they are looking for. And I'm sure that of the hundreds or thousands of different customers you have, each of them have a different desire, or they go for your product and service for a different reason. And today, we have data that can help us to do that. When I used to work at GM, there was one period that I worked in after sales, and I said, you know, we need psychologists more than salespeople at the showroom. Because as the person walks into the showroom, we need to be very fast to identify what is this person really looking for. Does he really want to buy a car? Or he want to show to his family that he has the possibility to offer them the ability to have a brand new car. He's going to buy a car, but the way we sell it is different. Because if he's bringing his wife and his kids, we may actually need to talk to his wife and his kids. Or maybe we need to show the car from a different angle. We need to show the car from a different perspective. I always say that women and men, it's much easier to identify the difference when they buy a car. Women are more rational when they buy a car than men. Men are much more emotional when they buy a car. And the woman, we always have to start saying, you know, we have different cup holders, you have this trunk space, you have, it's going to save more fuel. The mindset of customers is really important that we can actually understand. Does this person have friends? Does this person come walking? Does this person prefer to stay at home? How much effort does this person makes when they have to come to your store? Or how much effort they have to go as they have to click online several different clicks? Is effort important for their customers? The other thing is the present and future of customers. What customers think today is different when the customers will think about tomorrow. Or the needs that customers have today is going to be different than what customers will need tomorrow. And maybe it's not the need that is different, but technology has showed up, and it makes their life easier. So there's some concepts about customers that I say that we need to be able to anticipate. I'm going to show you, this is the first remote control. Actually, this is the second remote control. The first remote control has a cord that was connected from the remote control to the TV. Zenny launched that in 1956. Two buttons in a remote control. One was for volume, and the other was for changing the channel. Of course, at that time, there were only 3 channels, so it was easier, 1, 2, 3, and then restarted 1, 2, 3, so you click like 3 or 4 times, and you just could just zap easily. Let's look at what we did. From 2 buttons, we said, no, we have a lot of options now. We have the menu, and then this person can just change the contrast, the brightness, the colors, and we can make it wider, we can make it shrinker, and we have the cable TV, and then suddenly we don't know what button we push, that the TV just gets deconfigured, and we just can't see anything else. How complex we made our lives. The last remote control, some basics, voice control. Isn't that easier? You are seated at your couch, and you can just say, news. And you have all these options of news. And then say, OK, I want to see sports news. OK, you have all these options of sports news. You don't have to start like just looking at putting your glasses on and start just seeing which is the button that you have to push to actually get to the program that you actually want to see. Isn't that so basics? I always say that who was the genius who created the touch screen? Today you see kids who are born and they have just 5, 4 years old. They cannot think about using a control. They just see a screen and they just go with their fingers. Isn't that so basic? It's kind of prehistoric. We use our finger. We don't have to use any other electronic device to actually connect ourselves to what our need. So when we talk about customers, it's trying to go back to basics. It's what makes their life easier. Think about ourselves and think about how we behave and how we interact with all the things. It would be easier. I always think that I should be driving the car and thinking, oh, I have to write that email to that person. Why can't I just write the email while I'm driving without being distracted on my cell phone? Can't I just say, write an email and just start typing the email or just take a note of my thoughts? But this is going back to basics. It's how we make our lives, or makes our lives of our customers easier. Second topic about people is employees. We don't pay a lot of attention on employees, and we actually need to pay more attention on employees. I make this emphasis, not because I want to talk about leadership or about change, but we don't lead if we don't have people. We don't get results of a company, so the company will die eventually if we don't people engaged. There are several studies. I think most of the studies started later in the late 90s, in the beginning of the year 2000, about companies who have found out that the more engaged employees are, the best results of the company are. And it's very basics, and I invite you to try that as you go back to your day-to-day jobs. But if we get employees engaged and motivated, they go beyond what we are actually asking them to do. And it doesn't matter how difficult the transformation that you need to make on your company. It doesn't make a difference on how difficult the results of the company are. It doesn't make a difference whether or not you will be able to pay bonus at the end of the year. But it's very important that we think about getting them engaged. And I always heard some leaders say, well, you know, I need them to prove first that they are interested in working with us, and especially when we talk about millennials. And I said, I heard one leader came and said, you know, Isela, at Aerolíneas, I said, you know, I have these employees who are coming and saying that they want to have 30 days vacation and they just started their jobs. They are tired and they are demotivated, and they want to take a 1 year off. And I look at the leader and said, don't you think this is great? I said, taking 1 year off? I said, yeah, don't you want to take a 1 year off? Yes, I wish I could take 1 year off. Yeah, but we don't say it. The beauty of the millennials is that they don't lie to us. They tell us what they're thinking about. So it's very important that we try to understand where they are. It's very important that we think how we motivate them. It's very important that we think what we can do to make sure that they are committed to our company. So the big question that we know that we don't have the answer is that, do you know your employees? We had a case, and I'll give you just an example. We had a case, I was working at GM in one area, and we had this global organization, it was a global company, and we had to actually define who was going to be a guy that we were going to put in one area in Detroit. And it was a very, very high-profile opportunity. And we decided on a regional discussion that we're going to send somebody from South Africa. So, well, we have this great guy who lives in Port Elizabeth, and he's very talented, high potential. We're going to send him to Detroit because we know that from there he will continue evolving his career. So we send this guy to Detroit. After 3 months, his boss in Detroit calls my boss, and he said, you know, we're going to fire him. Fire him? Yes, he's not performing. We're going to fire him. So we got together all the regional teams and we said, you know, why is this happening? He's a high profile. We measure all the employees with the same book, with the same capabilities, and we are sure that this guy is the most talented guy that we have in the region for that position. So we decided that the best idea was to have our leader to just go to Detroit and have a meeting with him before they made any decision about firing him. So as he was getting to his office, he didn't know how to approach the guy, and he saw a big picture of a ship. And he said, well, it's a nice ship. And the guy said, well, yes, thank you. And who owns that? I said, it's mine. You own that ship? Yes, it's mine. I said, oh, wow, it's very interesting. Who is this guy? Where are you at? Because this ocean is, well, this is in Greece. Oh, so you were in Greece with your ship? I said, yeah, I was in Greece with my boat. And he continued the conversation because he was very interested on the boat. And he said, but where is this? Well, this was on the Olympics. And my boss looked at him and said, so you race on the Olympics? I said, yes, I represented South Africa in the Olympics. And then my boss didn't have the best idea than asking, so what happened to your boat? So, well, it's in South Africa. So you don't go sail with your boat anymore? I said, no, since I came to Detroit, I can't sail. That conversation was enough to understand why this guy was completely demotivated. And so the conversation continued saying, you don't like living in Detroit, right? I said, no, I can't. Every weekend, I used to go sail with my boat. I have another tournament, and I cannot just prepare myself, I cannot train, because my passion also goes with sailing. So understanding your customers and knowing your customers, what really drives them, what makes them come to your jobs, or what makes them come to their jobs on a day-to-day, and what you can do to actually make them feel great about coming to your jobs. So anything that we decide to do about change has to happen with people. If we don't have people motivated, if we don't have people engaged, if we don't have people compromised or committed with what we need to do, it's very difficult to talk about change. And when we talk about change, sometimes the companies, it's like talking about Chuck. So we say we have to change something, and then people say, oh, no, this is going to be terrifying. We don't know about how to make changes, and we feel uncomfortable about change. Now, when we think about change, and we think about our lives and our bodies, we're changing all the time. We have cells that are dying and cells that are being born. We have gray hair growing, or we have hair being lost. We are changing all the time, and we need to start making that changes are normal to our day-to-day lives. It's not that's something that is exterior, it's not something that belongs to the outside. We live change that we sometimes don't accept. We decided when we were 18 years old what we were going to study, and maybe we didn't study what we wanted. We change. We change our mind. The environment changed, or help us change our decisions, but we always change. So very fast on moments of change. We have moments of change where we think that we have a very normal sea and we are just sailing ourselves, by ourselves. We feel lonely sometimes, yes. Sometimes when we have to think about change, we feel that we are ourselves. This is the worst idea of change. Thunderstorms, very difficult, sea, it's going to be very challenging. We have the fun part of change. Some people love change, and some moments of changes or restructuring or transformations that are fun. And we always have the concept of team. And I always say that when we have teams, it's much easier to go through or sail through change. Some of the moments that they're seeing changes in the organization. Why do we have to change after all we have grown or gained? We are great. We have done a lot. Why do we have to change? This is temporary. It will go away. Soon, everything will get back to normal. So somebody's asking us to make some changes, but we don't have to worry. Just wait a little bit. It will just pass. My team thinks this is not going to work. This is the guy who doesn't believe change is going to work or what they need to do is going to work, so he blames the team. Or our competitor will go bankrupt because there's no way he can support this new way of doing business. Nothing is enough to our customers. These are sentences that I have heard throughout my 17 years at GM, my year at Aerolíneas, or my year and a half in the financial service company that I am at right now. But people are afraid of change. And as leaders, we need to understand that sometimes we are not the leader of change, but we have some people who can struggle with change and some people who can lead change better than us. And this is part of being able to identify within your team who is who and who can help you to drive change, who can help you to convince the others about change, although he may not be convinced or she may not be convinced about change, and recognize that sometimes you as a leader, you may not be the best person to actually drive the change that you need to make in the organization. So some of the questions that people always ask, so we say, well, where are we heading to? So we are lost. We have technology, we have our competitors, we have the environment, we have all these things that are actually changing the way we do business. So what do we need to do? Where are we heading to? And I say that the worst thing that we can do is do nothing, because the others will do. So the worst thing that we can do is just get stuck, terrified, and just wait and see what we're going to do. No, we have to move, and we have to move fast. Otherwise, we will stay where people decided to leave us. So we have to have in mind just that every evolution demands certain stress. And I always compare change with a gun that is pointed. The big difference is where the gun is pointed at. So if you're an athlete and you are about to release on the 100 meters, you just get on your position, you just are very alert to the gun, and you're just waiting for the gun so you can just get all your body with the adrenaline and the stress ready to give the most, so you can actually get to the end of the line with the best time. Difference of that, same adrenaline, same emotions that go through your body is with the gun pointed to your head. If you have the gun pointed at your head, you basically will be paralyzed. You will do nothing and will just wait for somebody to tell you what to do. When we talk about change, we have the same emotion that can happen and that can be driven by the two areas. It can be driven by paralysis, and you just wait, and that will be the worst thing that can happen because everybody will continue to move, your competitors will continue to move. Or you can just say, okay, I'm going to just get this adrenaline and actually do something. So the key here is the balance. So how to balance and how to understand your employees, the employees who are involved on this process of change that you need to make. So process of change demands courage, demands vision, demands agility. You have to identify tools. You have to motivate your team. And you have to find people to rely on. And again, most likely you're going to find people to rely on that you never thought that they will be able to actually handle change. So the big challenge is how do you make the change without forgetting the day-to-day? And I think this is one of the greatest challenges that we have, more than learning about how technology impacts our customers, more than learning about your customers or motivating your people, is how you do the balance without losing your customers as you do a transformation in your business, how you don't lose your employees as you do a transformation in your business. It's the day-to-day operations is very important to have an eye on as you go through a transformation. So final points is like we evolve or we disappear, and here is the concept of service. Like we have to understand that to survive, we have to have the concept of service in mind. We serve our customers, we serve our employees, because if we don't have our employees motivated, we're not going to have a future of our companies, and we're not going to have customers for long. So very critical that we have this concept of understanding customers, understanding people, and understanding what we're good at and how we can differentiate ourselves. For several years, like the leadership skills, we're always thinking about which are the opportunities that I have and that I have to evolve, and which are the things that I'm good at. And we pay a lot of attention on what are the things that we need to improve ourselves, and which are the things that we are not good at. And today we're seeing more attention and more focus on what we are good at, how we can continue developing on what we're good at, and how we can differentiate ourselves. And the final question is how fast we go on this process. And some people say, if we don't have a very clear vision of what I need to do, I better wait until I have the clear vision. Well, by the time you have the clear vision, somebody else just tries something else, your customers just move away to the other competitor, and you're just waiting until you have this clear vision, and your customers went away, and your employees went away because you don't have a business anymore. So here is like the story of the fable of the tortoise and the hare. If those two characters had the opportunities to actually race again, and they had learned about or from their mistakes, or especially the hare, for sure the hare would not just relax before he ended the race. He would probably just go fast race, and at the end of the race line, he would just relax. So the key here is like, if you don't have a vision, just talk to your customers, listen to your employees. Some employees have great ideas, and we don't actually listen to them because they interact with our customers. So listen to your customers, listen to your employees, and make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. And the faster we make mistakes, the faster we're going to be able to actually rethink about the way we're doing things and make some adjustments on the vision and make sure that we can actually move fast to actually get to the race line the way we want. So this is what I had for you. I just want to thank you and wish you all the best. And I think we have 5 minutes at least for a couple of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Isela. Very good, your timing. We have a little time for questions and answers. If you want to make a question to Isela, please raise your hand. The volunteers over there in the middle of the room and in the back. And if you want to make a question, feel free. This is a good opportunity. It's part of our growing. Okay, do you have any question? No? No. She wrote a book about the leader, the leader in you. It was a bestseller. And I'd like to ask about the eye-to-eye contact with your people. You said you have to look into the eye to your people. You said something about it. But related to technology, to the impact of technology, many of them has fear to kicked out because of technology. So
I think the big challenge of getting to know your customers with the eye-to-eye and all the technology is that sometimes you don't even know where your customer actually is, or you don't actually know the face of your customer. And there are some emotions that are really related to the ability to actually read the body language of your customer. So I think that this is the biggest challenge that we have as technology evolves, and how we can actually get the data. And there's a lot of data. Like if you think about, I don't know how many of you use Google, but like, and we had all the experience with the elections on the US, but how much data is actually going on the social media, and how much people can actually get to know us more than what we think we know ourselves. So I think that technology can help us to track more about our customers. And customers are willing to answer questions if they truly understand that you are interested on how you can make their lives easier. To actually deliver the products and the services that you're looking for, or the customers is looking for.
Okay, thank you, Isela.
No, I would just take advantage of one thing, because I didn't talk about a lot of leadership, and there's one piece that I always think that is very, very important to ourselves as people. It doesn't matter our role in our professional lives, is to get to know ourselves. And I think that this is the biggest challenge in the times that we live today, that we don't have time for anything, that we want to have time, that we always give priorities to others, especially women, before we think about ourselves. And part of my book, the book I started to write in 2012, I thought about writing it in 2012, because I thought that a lot of people were asking, how do you go through the challenges, and how you actually make your efforts, or just be able to actually advance in life without the challenges that we face. And I think that we need to spend more time thinking about who we are and how much we are changing. And we talk about change is because we're changing every day. In my first year of the university, I had a philosopher who gave us a speech, and this was back in 1980-something. And he was a great philosopher, very, very knowledgeable about the Western education. And he said that we should dedicate at least 30 seconds of our day to understand how we are changing, and what stimuli we receive during that day that made ourselves to change. So one of the basic things is, if we think about how many of us eat sushi today, and if we think about when we are 5, 6 years old, how many actually didn't like to eat fish when your parents would bring fish to the table. And today we don't think about not eating fish, but we eat raw fish. And things, that several stimuli that we receive along our days that actually impact in the way we think about life, and we think about our realization, self-realization. And if we don't feel self-realized, it's very difficult that we can actually work on thinking about how we can make the realization of our customers, and even more difficult thinking about how we can make that happen to our customers. So I think that we go back always to the same thing. I think it's two pillars. It's like getting to know people, and if you don't know yourself, it's going to be very difficult to get to know your customers.
Yes.
And the second thing is technology. So I think that these are the two elements that don't fight against technology, don't fight against people. Try to get more closer to technology, try to get more closer to people, and some of the people that you get closer will be able to actually get to know more technology if you're afraid of technology. So with that...
Wise words. Thank you for answering that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isela. This is
Thank you
applause
so
for
much.
her.
Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Isela.
You're welcome.